Need for Speed Unbound. Just rolls off your tongue so easily. Looks like $1,000,000 and is worth every bit of hype it has. Right? Finally something out of the ordinary and completely different from former failures. Correct? Well then let me tell you something. There is one thing that almost ruined the whole game for me. At the end of this video, you will know why I think Unbound still has a long way to go. And with that, welcome back to Overtake. And I gotta tell you, I was the biggest sucker for Need for Speed Unbound leaks the past weeks. Even after my initial reaction to the reveal, I was super hopeful that we would have something very special on our hands. So naturally, when I finally got to play this puppy, I couldn't wait to throw down some serious time to explore something hopefully completely new. Need for Speed Unbound plays in the imaginative city of Lakeshaw. In it, we play a custom-created street racer who is involved in all sorts of drama on and off track. As I don't want to spoil much of the story to anyone, I'll try to be as vague as possible when it comes to that. If you want to be as exact as possible when it comes to racing all the time, go ahead and lend us a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any NFS videos ahead. But back to Unbound. Unbound features a whole slew of things to do to both progress the story and advance your task in getting more and better cars. While races are really varied and don't get boring easily, you will need to play Taxi Driver more than a few times in pickup missions as well. Interesting to say the least is that these always feature our rivals from street racing, with varying degrees of hostility while we're at it.
Name's Rudiger. I need to get to my safe house. Now.
Wow, Rudiger, no foreplay, huh?
What is this, a date? I need a ride, or are we going to have a problem?
Do I sound like this, huh? Most of the racing and the missions happen on the world map, which is the open world for NFS. The map is what we come to expect over the years. It's not gigantic, but enough to not feel like a shoebox. What they really nailed though is the terrain and the environment. Never feels like there's too much going on. It was a big concern for me as I saw that there was a heavy emphasis on cop chases this title, but it turned out just fine. Oh yeah, cops play a big part in Unbound as well. So much so, they engage in every race, which leads to chases afterwards. Based on your heat level, that varies in severity. Having a low heat level allows you to deal with just a bunch of donut eaters, while a level of 3 or higher means you're full-on enemy of state mode. My honest takes on cops this title is that they feel not very good. They are overused, easy to manage, but yet annoying. The way these chases happen in the same pattern after 80% of the races just makes them a nuisance in my opinion, rather than something special. Definitely a bummer here and something EA did better 16 years ago. And also, I don't like to be flamed that much. Getting away from these chases and winning races gives you money, which thankfully is the only form of currency to my knowledge. If it got to be followers or style points again, or something along these lines, I would have puked. But this way, it's easy to understand. Win races and progress story. You can also wager while racing now. Have a friendly bet with the guy you just picked up 10 minutes ago to free him of even more of his cash. If you can beat them, of course. Speaking of beating somebody in a race, how does the gameplay feel? Racing in NFS Unbound is actually improved and cool. For the most part. Handling and car feeling is good, and a big bunch better than what I was used to. On gamepad, I felt like this was one of the more responsive games, and it just fits the controller really well. I'll talk a little bit about the visuals later on, but especially the newly added effects make racing just so much more enjoyable to the eye and exciting. But, and now comes the big but, whoever came up with the idea of having checkpoints in NFS needs to get their head examined. They make no sense whatsoever. You are already running on a pretty linear track, even with visual aids to help you along. Why do we need these points? And why are they worse than ever? I can admit that I'm not the best driver alive, but not hitting these goals shouldn't result in me getting reset and effectively shafting my whole race.
Bruh.
I know they existed previously, but some of them are just insane this time. It's just weird when a game that is called Unbound is so restrictive when it comes to any form of alternative routing. Let me be clear, the game only allows you to leave the racing corridor when it wants you to. This took away a huge part of my hope to be able to be a tad bit more creative this time. But if you can overlook that aspect, you will be pleased with how everything feels in Unbound. One additional upside I noticed was that tuning your vehicle is more nuanced and leads to a feelable difference based on the parts you installed. Apart from the obvious car goes more brrr, of course. So the tuning aspect has delivered in my eyes. Many customizing options that completely change the way the car looks or behaves contribute to a lot of the street feeling you have when playing Unbound. I also touched on the variety of races already. Time trial, drag, lap-based racing, and A to B races are what we come to expect. But especially with the wager, it's now not always the objective to only win. Just placing higher than your rival can be rewarding enough sometimes. AI also feels alright, I would say. Although not too different from what I'm used to. I feel like they still attempt the same moves every game and rubber banding will still always be an issue. But fighting with them in the streets feels rewarding and exciting most of the time. With having spoken about the racing aspect, now let's get into the story only a bit. Oof. NFS and story, more like a recipe for disaster in past titles. Flat characters that were constantly chewing on your ear about something you just couldn't care less about. At least in some departments, Unbound is different. To summarize the approximated hour-long prologue that introduces us to the story, the player is an upcoming youngster who for some reason always has to have a co-driver by their side. We drive street races to do that, in a city that features a mayor that is strictly against such things. Character-wise, this is probably the best assembly of NPCs yet. They show emotion, they curse, they are believable, for the better or worse. They are still annoying most of the time, to be honest. And they haven't fixed these damn phone calls. Please explain to me why every time I drive anywhere, I get checked on, called up, or directed to a destination I was already heading to. My real problem with this is that NFS Unbound features enough input for the player to enjoy their time and know what to do. It doesn't really need countless conversations that turn out to be unfunny most of the time. Also weird is the political direction the game has started to take. I won't get into too much detail, but if street racing, carjacking, and cops crashing criminals want to lecture the player about morality, it's ironic to say the least. The Need for Speed story was best when it was get to the top, drive fast, do whatever it takes to get there, and beat the person who's in charge of something. They do provide a compelling reason for you to do that this time, but I would wish they would cut down on at least half of the pop culture references. Just seems a little bit too much like GTA in PG. But nevertheless, there are things that the new NFS has up on almost every game out there. NFS Unbound looks nothing short of amazing. Admittedly, every time I look at a game that features Criterion, I feel that way. But honestly, it's the most impressive thing in this game. As Need for Speed Unbound presents itself completely detached from anything we have ever seen before, with a new art style and wacky special effect, it would be easy to think that this game is just a cartoon. But far from it. Where it wants to, this game is super realistic, with awesome reflections of lights and color scheme. Where the game wants to be different, it hits a home run as well. What really got me is the way these two worlds harmonize with each other. Never in my playthrough did I think something looked out of position or weird. Big compliment on that front. What plagues the game is something graphic engines like Frostbite have always lack, and that is the fast loading of textures. I remember having a similar problem in Battlefield a lot. When Unbound switches to a cutscene or a new territory, you see the clumps of textures which reload as the time goes on. Bruh. It's only slightly off-putting, and with that much graphical detail, it may just be a necessary evil. Even though it really happens a lot. Performance-wise, there is the occasional lag here and there, but nothing one would deem bad. And considering the graphical depth, impressive how stable it runs. We tested it on a high-specs PC, so it may be that slightly older machines will have a harder time. In the audio department, EA has also strayed from known waters, as we hear the most famous rap tunes from all over the world, unfiltered and placed in the right spots. The combination of the audio and visual experience was just spot on, and oftentimes let me forget about the clear downsides this title possesses. So in the end, did Need for Speed keep what the name was suggesting? Was it really unbound from the shackles of the past? I would have to say no. It was a different experience, and even though I liked Heat, in my opinion, it is the best title of the past years. However, I don't think that is much of a task. My main problem is that I feel like aside from a remake of the setting and some fire songs to listen to, this is just an even more strict version of the past titles. If it wasn't for animated wings when making a big jump, or clouds of cartoon smoke coming out of my tires when I drift, I would have been so disappointed from the second race onwards. The story is engaging to play, but takes weird turns with unnecessary filler. But they managed to make the characters cool. The racing feels good until some random turn resets you 50 places back because you didn't hit a checkpoint correctly. And cop chases are exciting before completing the third race in a row where they intercept and follow you afterwards. So this is not something completely different. It is Need for Speed. It is a better Need for Speed than we had in a long time. Is it a great game because of that? No, it's not. It's stuck in the limbo of high expectations and low intentions, leaving me a bit disappointed, I have to say. As we have only tested NFS in single player yet, you can always drop the wish down below to go multiplayer for next video. Until we get there, why don't you go ahead and check out our latest review of WRC if you feel like other racing games may be a better fit for you. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you next time, and cheerio.